Today's episode is an inspiring journey into the world of creativity, adaptability, and what it means to thrive as a modern polymath in technology. Joining me is the multi-talented Sam Hopkins, a true generalist who has made waves in tech, language preservation, music, and even as a trivia champion on Jeopardy! Sam's unique career path blends disciplines like sociology, philosophy, music, demonstrating the incredible power of interdisciplinary thinking in solving complex problems and fostering innovation. In this episode, we will explore how Sam's ADHD has driven his diverse learning journey, how his love for connection and creativity shapes his work, and why being a generalist is a superpower in today's fast evolving tech landscape. From the lessons he's learned as a DJ and a language learner to his thoughts on ethics in tech and advice for aspiring generalists, Sam's story is a testament to the power of curiosity and versatility. So tune in as we uncover the fascinating intersections of technology, humanity, and creativity. Sam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Mateo. It's very kind of you to invite me, and I appreciate the introduction.
Very good. Let's get started. Can you share what you're doing today in your current role and how it ties to your journey as a generalist in technology?
Yeah, so I'm a senior advisor at Mind Over Machines, which is an IT consulting firm in the Baltimore area. And that means that I engage in what we could call sales activity, really leveraging relationships that I already have, meeting people, getting to know people, asking questions, and being interested in what they're doing and understanding the amazing capacity of our team of developers, project managers, and different people who have decades of experience, 35 years just with this company, people with a deep knowledge of the evolution of technology and what it means to organizations, really helping folks to zoom out and understand where they fit in the history of business, a lot of nonprofit organizations also. And I get to build relationships. You know, they say relationship management, maybe sometimes it's just a term, but I really believe in it. And that the money comes from good relationships and from shared benefit. And I do some project management also, so I really get to see how the work is done, which makes me very happy.
At the end of the day, I keep going to it's all about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you build that. And I love it because you have your generalized approach, and we will talk more about that enables you can create a relationship with whomever is in front of you, right? You will find
Mm.
something, and I love that about you. um Tell us a little bit about your path. What was your path like to get to where you are now? Were there key moments that shaped your decision to be a generalist rather than a specialist?
Yeah, I don't know how much it was a decision, but just sort of my nature and hoping that the market would send me good signals that I can have the brain that I have, that I can have my emphasis on relationships, and also feed myself and my family. So, we live in a world of reality and of incentive structures, and so I've now feel like an old man sometimes, even at age 41. But in the past 20 years, the world has changed a lot. My undergraduate major in university was linguistics and international studies. I chose those primarily because I had always cared about the world around me. I was good at learning languages. I was interested in it. Fortunately, my close by university, I grew up in Kansas City, and the University of Kansas had a full linguistics department and also an international studies co-major, and I wanted to save the world, and then two wars unfolded while I was in my 4 years of college. And so I fell in love with a girl who lived here in the Baltimore area. And instead of going to maybe a diplomatic path or the military or something, I followed her here and then got into different exploration of journalism, ultimately business, and trying to uh, make a contribution to the world around me. I think the consistent theme, whether I'm creating world peace or just trying to help some companies and some employees live happier lives during their work week and get better data and everything, It's always been about taking signals, looking around a full 360 view. Maybe that's the generalist aspect of it, but not going just in one direction all the time. I talk a lot about a garden sprinkler that rotates around, and as long as I'm alive, then I'll have these opportunities to get deeper in different areas. And when it comes to technology, I think again, we can't know what the multiple forces of world history, how things will unfold. But in a technology project with a beginning and an end, and words like agile development, and where we're working with people and have tools, just like hanging a picture on the wall, we can change our technology landscape and what we see when we open up our computer. This is a meaningful, I think, contribution to the world, and there are benefits to doing good business. And a lot of times, where I have not had the hard skills of a developer, of a programmer, being conversational and appreciating people's work and taking away the key elements of business goals or what technology can do for you has enabled me to bridge the introductory conversations about how to achieve something, how to build a business over time, and also to manage through difficulty. And 100% of these organizations, until AI comes and destroys us all or something, which I don't really think will happen, you are always going to have human relationships, to for the happy times and the less happy times.
I love it, and I love the garden sprinkle
Mm.
analogy. I think that's great. So let's talk a little bit about those, that set of diverse skills, right? What different disciplines have you learned throughout your career, and how do you think some of them have contributed to the way you approach problems and opportunities today?
So I could talk about language, and I worked a lot with foreign learners of English, and one thing that my school emphasized was conversation. So I was a conversation group leader, and specifically giving people to talk about music that they loved. So it would open their brains, open their hearts, make them find a vocabulary to express their thoughts that they were passionate about. Something beyond just reading the newspaper or reading the Bible and being able to answer a question on paper. Language is for speaking, language is for meaningful communication. It's not even about finding the perfect word. We learn in language the art of circumlocution, of talking around something. If I don't know the exact word, when I try to translate inside of the language, one of the best things you can do is learn to say, how do you say in that language? So you try to keep it inside. I remember a French word list where it was defining the word for weed as bad plant. That's maybe not the best word, but you
Ah,
understand what the person is saying. And that life, for the most part, demands progress, not perfection. So I think that's a great lesson from language. In sports, if your teammate scores, you score also. As a player, as a coach, as a parent, I've tried to really, I believe that sports can make us better at interacting with other people, understanding, the balance. If the team from Uruguay or from my favorite professional team or my kids' team wins or loses, I still have to represent myself. Like, what is that balance? Where can we let our brains go a little bit and have passion and feel the benefits of being in a large group? And then maybe the political side of me goes, what's the danger of all chanting the same thing all the time, And so language, sports, and then maybe as a third key thing, music and feeling the direction, especially of playing with a band. I'm a drummer. I see the drum set there, keeping the rhythm, understanding that even if the guitar player and the bass player start to drift a little bit, if you keep the rhythm, then they can come back to something, right? So that means something maybe in project management, that we have to have some critical path, some consistent beat that's going along. And sitting under or around all of this is that I always knew that I could write. I was good at writing. I was good at putting words together. And that at some point when I was an intern in the House of Representatives in Washington D.C., I sat down for lunch and read an article about the difficulty in a lot of businesses of managers being used to making just phone calls to the factory floor or whatever it was, and they weren't good at writing. They were going to, remedial English classes because now they were having to write emails. This was 20 years ago. They said, email isn't going away, guys. You have to get good at this. So I said, well, if you can make, if writing is valuable, before I was just doing it in school and because I like to, or a student newspaper, whatever it was, but maybe this can be a key theme in my work life, and getting paid to talk to business people or talk to musicians or talk to athletes, I would say encouraged me that in this day and age, you can keep doing entrepreneurial activities. You can keep doing artistic things, even with just a computer. Maybe I can't go and play for the national soccer team or baseball team or something, but through that process, I ended up getting my master's in business administration at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, understanding that even in the medical world, the research world, I could make some contributions and start to pivot from being an observer, being someone in the press box, to trying to be on the field, to keep creating, and again, just to contribute in any way I could. And the humility that I come to, maybe I'm not the big specialist, and maybe I'll be in your organization for a couple of years and go away, but I promise, or at least I hope, that I'll make good contributions in that time. And that mentality, I think, has led me to really accumulate a lot of really nice relationships and proof of what I have contributed. Thank God.
I love it. So let me ask you this: when it comes to relationship management or leadership, do you think that your ability to jump from one field to the other, you talked a lot about language, sports, music, writing, all amazing, and all of them in themselves very universal topics, right? How do you think that helps you approach relationship management and leadership? And do you think it makes you, I don't want to say better, but equipped for it as a generalist instead of a specialist?
Yeah, I think I make very few assumptions. I'm always starting from the kindergarten level. Even if I know a lot, I usually keep it to myself. And so being appreciated as someone who listens is important to me. And maybe, as you mentioned at the beginning, that comes also a reaction to being a kid with hyperactivity. And I was always going paka paka, as my teachers would say, sometimes. And I have plenty to say. There's plenty in here, but I'm even, for me selfishly, I want to add to what I know. Every time that I talk to a client, that I talk to a leader, that I see a kid play, I'm putting that in my database of relevant similar projects. And as a mentor to current students, I always like to talk about things I wish I knew when I was younger. And or for a client, oy vavoy, what do we do about AI? I'm like, well, let me tell you about, hey, you're not alone, right? To some people, I talk about being the technology bartender sometimes.
Right.
Tell me your, and or when someone says, oh, I feel so frustrated, da da da. Tell me more about that. What does that mean to you? Even if they say some technological term, I want to hear, tell me what that means to you. You have your definition within the organization. Your CEO read it in some newspaper article, they heard it on the radio, and these things become sort of headless mandates sometimes. We want to put a head to it. We want to give it a brain. And in order to do that, we need to think together so that everyone can feel that this is a project that we thought of together. I think as talking, with talking to students or even my own kids or whatever, I'm happy, and it makes me feel less crazy that the world, I think, broadly is really geared to people who want to hear and who want to work together. If someone says they have the completely formed idea and they're just hiring you to put bricks together or whatever, I think usually those projects, those companies don't stand the test of time. And so I think I'm only in this place because I have gained continuous encouragement for this approach. It's difficult. You have to be creative. I think that's a big word. And creative with your relationships, and make sure you don't burn bridges, and that you do good work. But the reward in the long term, I think, is flexibility, is less fear when the market is changing. I watched as a financial journalist when the subprime crisis happened,
Right.
and I, a lot of my uh, peers, people my own age, some of my best friends were 25 years old in the middle of a 6-year PhD program at that time. And I decided I'm not going to get boxed in because it seems like the academic, faculty landscape, the career path is changing because of everything going on in the economy. So I'm going to spend a couple of years and, pick up a wide set of tools that help me understand this business world so that I'm not scared of these forces of nature. I feel like I have some sense of control. And with that control, or with that education, you won't always have the control, but at least you can have the vocabulary to know a bit more about what's going on. And it's that vocabulary, like with language, that helps you converse and continue to add knowledge.
Perfect. So you said something about it at the beginning, right? There's a perceived risk sometimes that if you go too broad on topics like sociology or philosophy, etc.,
Mm.
um, how do you bring that back to like time boxed projects and we need to deliver here? Do you find yourself in your mind pivoting between that kind of letting it loose type of generalist way of thinking towards, okay, now we need to focus and we need to complete this project? How do those two inform each other, if they do in any way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think you always have to have a point where you sit down and do the work, right? In Yiddish, a language that my grandfather spoke and which I've learned, and it works in German also. There's a term, the Luftmensch, so an air person who's always
Okay.
floating in the clouds, right? I'm terrified of being a Luftmensch, right? It can be really lovely, like in a Chagall painting, and these people floating, and it's this lovely life. But um, I write myself a lot of notes, sometimes even on my hand. I call it my ADHD henna. If you know the tattoos, sometimes it goes away. But that's so that when I come back to my mission control, like where I'm standing here, I can consolidate these things, and I can remember that I want to take action. And for especially being a project manager and dealing with clients, I can't talk forever. We have to move this along. And so I take great comfort in Gantt charts or a scope of work document where we really are certain that we have an agreement, that gives direction. And then you let the creativity, let these other variables live in a safe space. We want to have, and you create a container for uncertainty, and almost your art, by defining what you can, and understanding, we might call unknown unknowns or whatever. And I think all of that is a very fundamentally almost philosophical process. And the philosophy that we have, or what we call philosophy, someone sat down to write that. If Aristotle just drifted along in Athens eating souvlaki and we never heard, got his words 2,000 years later, he's not Aristotle, he's some guy, right? So it's always that process, and that you have to signal to the world that you're a serious person.
Yeah, no, I agree. um let's talk a little bit about music. I know it's very important to you and it's a part
Mhm.
of your life. Tell me a little bit more about that. You're a DJ, you play drums, what else do you do? And tell me a little bit on how that impacts. um you said something about being able to play with others, right, and
Mhm.
keeping the time as a drummer. What else, what else that does it make you less scared about being creative within certain boundaries, or being out there? What other things do you think music brings to you that makes you Sam and that special human being that you are.
Yeah, I think you get that sense of connection of making somebody smile when you are DJing and you play a song that is important to them because when they were in college or when they were a child or whatever. I just DJ'd we call it spaghetti disco, a fundraiser here at my son's school, and there's a dinner that happens, and there's also a big dance party. And my God, when you're DJing for people from 5 years old to 50 years old, how can you please everybody? But fortunately, the people seemed happy. They were dancing around, and I kept the beat going for the most part. I made a good transition between songs. That's a relatively new thing that came from the disco era of actually mixing records together. It continued
Right.
in hip hop and dance music and everything, but something continuous, being able to get into what we know religiously as sort of a trance state, like
Right.
the dervishes in Turkey or a mantra or whatever it is. In the Jewish tradition, we kind of rock while we pray sometimes, you know. The music, 100% of people connect to music. I've heard there are some people who don't process, they can't tell the difference between a Beatles song and the sound of a construction site, but I don't know if I believe it, right? And God help them, you
Right.
know, that
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to live that life. But then something about, you know, when I was a kid, my father was a drummer and my parents were always listening to, you know, vinyl records and the radio. We had lots of musicians around us and feeling that I could participate. And then my parents wouldn't get mad if I was playing along on the table while someone was playing, you know, and helping people to be brave and that they have a role in not only consuming that art but making that art. I think music is maybe a little closer to create to general or universal potential for creativity than painting is. I don't really know how to approach painting something. I don't get any sense when I go to the museum usually, oh, I could do that. But
Yeah.
if I hear a song on the radio, sometimes I dream even a song that's a melody moving along. And there's a big technological aspect of just capturing those ideas. And you can do that these days on a computer, like we're talking right now, and start to lay out those multiple tracks. And you could have your own ideas and you listen to it a bunch of times and add new ones with synthesizer instruments or drums or whatever. But the magic I was talking about playing live music with people is, you know, jamming around, improvising, there I'm trying to learn more these days about music theory, not only what does my ear crave or what do I like, but a little bit about why do I like it. It's this
Right.
balance. It's similar to language, right?
Yeah.
You learned your mother tongue without thinking about it, right? And it's only people get anxiety when they're learning this new language. So letting the music come out of you, finding the right collaborators, which has been an enormous theme in my career, just nice people who I enjoy dealing with and letting business ideas or creative ideas or a sports team or whatever, but that evolves over time. You get to know each other. That pass down the field in American football, normal football, whatever it is, they can sense each other.
Yeah.
And then music, where you can sense where this is going, whether this is the next phase of the song or we're about to end the song now. You know, there's some magic in that, and it requires a balance of skill, of practice, of time, of allowing yourself the time to get better and to have repeated collaborations with people. That I think all of those are good lessons. And again, it's with the iTunes, Spotify, whatever, the ability to publish those things, even on LinkedIn, to say, here's something real. I'm not just messing around in my
Yeah.
basement. I've followed this through. We've invested money. We got this together, and you can hear it in Antarctica. You know, that's a it's a pretty magical thing. You know, and these are the places also where I want to contribute to technology because I think it even despite current events sometimes it's the general trend is increasing commonality, increasing opportunities for collaboration,
Yeah.
and to bring that together and make work even a little bit easier, so that you have your creative brain when you get home. I, I like that um, piece of helping the world that I'm doing.
I love it. And so you are now learning music theory and you learn, I don't know how many languages, and you keep learning, right? It's a
Yeah.
lifelong learning. You're really an enthusiast on lifelong learning. Tell me more about that. Tell me first, the first part of the question is what drives you, and what value do you get out of it, and how do you feel when you're learning? And then how do you think, or why do you think this is important for anyone working in technology, right? That
Mm.
thing about staying curious and lifelong learning and continue to learn new things.
Yeah, I think sometimes about when you're lifting weights, you're actually sort of breaking your muscles. Your muscles can only get bigger if you tear them a little bit. Last night, talking to my cousin who's a jazz guitar professor, I felt really stupid. I am not a stupid person, but I had to observe myself and say, the same reason you feel dumb right now is why you want to push through, and you'll feel a little less dumb, hopefully tomorrow when you practice these scales more or whatever. With music also, like you can't just improvise unless you know the scales. You have to know is the kind of constrained universe of notes that are okay to play within this context. And the learning, I think, feeds that ability to collaborate. You're always learning a new person. You're going to a networking event and looking at name tags. And my God, it's true from the old Dale Carnegie and How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you say somebody's name, Matteo, if I say your name over and over, you're like, wow, he really knows me. He appreciates me. There's just something magical that happens there. So my first answer, a long way around the block, but if you say, why are you a lifelong learner? I really don't know any other way. I've had some dreams, of course, about selling a company and I can retire on the beach somewhere, but I'd probably be really bored and I would find something else to learn. It was another language or something. But I also think that everybody is a lifelong learner. I think it's a little bit of a false paradigm, like when they talk about auditory and visual learners. Everybody is doing both. Um, and it's and we're in micro evolution all the time within our lives. I think what maybe I have certain abilities. I'm kind of objectively very good at learning languages and pretty quickly. I also studied the system of how languages fit together in linguistics. It's like people would say, "Oh, you study linguistics? What language?" I said, "Well, it's like saying biology, which animal?" It's like it's not that tight. It's what are the patterns here, and describing a natural world with more specific terminology. And so the evolution of technology around us, for example, if you could be a great technology salesman in 1984, but if 2024 you're still speaking in the same terms, it's not gonna resonate. You can take metaphors and say, oh, I remember, you become some wise old man or whatever. Oh, this reminds me of when we had our mainframe and programming in COBOL or whatever it is. People like that. But we're constantly updating the another language thing and even a music thing. How are the Rolling Stones still making new songs? They haven't gone through all of the possible melodies yet. That's amazing. You're all the time coming up with new sentences that have never been spoken before. And that capacity for innovation, it's the flip side of always learning. Maybe we're all lifelong teachers also. And I think maybe that can make us feel proud and have a bit more confidence out in the world.
100%. That's all I can say. I completely agree and I love it. Thinking about the next question, right? And about philosophy. Um, and let me just ask you this. Do you think being, the philosophical ideas or that way of thinking can help you navigate the big picture questions better in the tech world? And even if you are a product person, you are a little bit like a philosopher in a way.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some proof from the success of people like Steve Jobs, who were not only thinking big about global transformations, but were even, taking some chemicals to help them open their minds up. and seeing ourselves in the flow of history, that there's not just some place where the history books are, and that they're set there, but that especially with the internet, it's a constant updating. I think it's important to have a worldview, to try to align your work with that worldview. And we're in a place where a farmer, it takes some time on earth to plant and see what happens with the rain and everything, and then how big your corn is that year. But as I said, agile, and different testing cycles and technology, you can run these experiments all the time to see, maybe it's not like affecting the world right away, but the Netflix, for their difficulty now with the boxing matches, there's a great story about, I think, Reed Hastings sending himself one CD in the mail and just see if it doesn't break.
Right.
And I love that scale approach to technology. I think that is very philosophical. If I can do it one time, can I do it 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times? If I can we see it with nonprofit organizations. If I can help one kid get to college, can I help 1,000 kids get to college or whatever, And that's, so I think the philosophy, just like calculus is about describing natural systems so that we can extrapolate and send people to outer space, philosophy is kind of thinking through history, thinking about different preferences for how people can live life. And then what is applied philosophy? I would say to some extent it's politics, right? That you're saying, here are my values from my religion, from my study, whatever it is, and I'm going to put those into effect through laws. But uh, being able to think about ideas that are not your ideas or that are very abstract. I think that people want to interact with others who don't pin them down. You want to make something happen, but you want, again, a safe space to talk about things. And it just it contributes to an intellectual flexibility to think about all the different ways that people have approached the meaning of life over time. I think it is important so that you don't feel, boxed in to the current way of doing things. It's philosophy. I think most entrepreneurs are philosophers, the very stubborn in many ways, also the best ones. And so you have to feel that force of the history of thought that's along with you, that I'm not alone here, and this is the way that things are going. I see 100 years ahead from now that I'm not going to be crazy, right?
Right. Right. It's wonderful because each time we go into one question, that could turn into a topic itself, right? It could be an episode, standalone episode. We have like 10 standalone episodes that we could do, which is good because we can do more episodes in the future.
All right, sounds
Um,
good.
in terms of people that are listening right now, and maybe they consider themselves as generalists, what advice would we give them in terms of, if you want to build a strong career in technology, but you don't see yourself being super specialized, what can
Mm.
Sam tell them in terms of staying competitive and valuable in the industry, but as a generalist?
Yeah, I heard of this book and then read the book called Range by David Epstein.
Okay.
And even when I first heard about it, uh, I think the on the TV show they were saying, well, how do you have range? How can you be a generalist without being seen as a very distracted person? Oh, or they're not serious, or they can't commit. But I think there are my answer, which I like yelled at the television at the time: finish something. Like if you can show I have finished things in multiple domains. I'm looking at my wall right here at two prints that I did that won me an art contest at a scientific conference in London, England. And it was an idea. I said, maybe this will be stupid, but it seems like it's cool. It's comparing deep space photography with an electron microscope image, and people liked it. It appealed to their sort of scientific philosophical roots, why they got into science, and it's something real. I had to pay for it. I could drop it on my foot if I wanted to, and then fortunately I got an award for it. But the main thing was that I finished something. Yeah, right. So didn't expect that. So a, a, a resume, a CV isn't just about jobs you've had or people you've persuaded to give you money. It's about things that you've, seen through from a beginning to an end, and that you can pull ideas from the sky or from your dreams or whatever and make something real. And that's, I think, that garden sprinkler approach. It doesn't have to be 50 similar paintings, Andy Warhol or something, but it could be that I did one painting over here, I made a song here. I'm generally, one thing that tells you is unless these were all solitary projects, I'm good at working with people, or at least I can find a way to publish a book or whatever it is. Um, and that, I want to impact the world around me. So in addition to studying, I do think it's very important to finish, whether it's a university program or apprenticeship or whatever it is, but there's a reason that there are curricula that exist. You don't want a firefighter who just learned from a few YouTube videos how to be a firefighter, I don't think,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so that is always something. It matters to show up, to get the certificate at the end, not because you're obsessed with the certificate, but because that certificate means something, and then continue to add there. And I think to have a worldview as much as you can form one, it's hard to hit fast forward and be 15 years old and say I want to work in technology because of this and that, and because I've studied Plato or the Bible so much or whatever. But curiosity and pattern recognition, I
Right.
say, are the real roots of intelligence. And if you can demonstrate that you're able to connect seemingly sort of disparate phenomena in a unique way, and that you can communicate, and that you're hungry for knowledge, I think that's anybody that anybody would want that person on their team. And so that's at least a way to make a living. And then they'll teach you the practical ways that they need you to help within that company. But when they talk about getting your resume off of the stack, you know this, especially with AI now, it's really going to be you as a person who has to distinguish yourself, and not just the skill that you can execute.
I love it. Um, One final random question to you, Sam. What do you do when you are not working? And I was thinking about this one. I'm like, this
Mhm.
guy, he does a million things, right? So maybe what do you do? What are you doing lately? Because I'm sure it will change in the near future, and you will try something new as well.
Yeah. No, well, one thing I think about is I hope that there are times where I'm letting sort of the wind blow through my head, a little bit. Like it feels like everything, even if I cook a lot, is one answer for my family. I really enjoy that. That's a creative act, a little bit of recipes, a little bit of what have I eaten at the restaurant that I know I like. Can I recreate that? And it's very functional, right? I think about music, especially sitting down at the piano or jamming, as something where I'm not committed to an end result. It's something that is productive because it's accumulating knowledge that I want to use to hopefully have a hit song or something someday. But it's relaxed exercise. I take naps. I'm pretty good at taking a power nap. I do get plenty of sleep. There was a period in my life where I said maybe I'll be like Thomas Edison and only sleep 4 hours a day. And I think one person said that's not a very good idea. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's not a good idea. So um, I hang out a lot. I've been throwing the football with my son a lot lately. My father, his health isn't so great lately. I've been trying to spend time with him. Family matters to me a lot. Family history, kind of going through pictures and things, just reflecting. Um, and Yeah, just being together, almost trying to find excuses to go idle, to do nothing. Now we're
Right.
getting into the holidays, and I've even been preparing myself to make sure that when I have some days off, that I have to practice in my head. What does that look like?
Right.
You know, so
Right.
at least my wife and I, we found we can go to a spa. And if I don't have any phone near me or a piece of paper or something, I really am going to have to do nothing. I won't have my hands, right?
Have you
So they'll force me.
have you tried you know the mate, yerba mate? Have you tried yerba
Mhm.
mate from Uruguay and Argentina?
Yeah.
So it's a good way of doing nothing because you're actually pouring the thing like every 2 other minutes, right? So
Okay.
in Uruguay and Argentina and other places in South America, you will find people that are maybe just looking at the sea, horizon, whatever, and just drinking the thing, right?
That's good.
It's a weird thing that helps a lot of people here. Just what we say, it's like we're contemplating. What are you doing? Contemplating, right?
Yeah. That's
Uh,
good.
but the trick is, I'm an anxious person, right? So contemplating without doing anything is like ah. But if I'm doing the whole drinking and everything, I have things in my hand, I'm doing something, and so on.
Yeah, there's
But
a bit of a physical routine to it and a rhythm of
yes,
it. Yeah.
yes,
Sometimes when I'm playing the drums, I even just like close my eyes. I try to not do a huge progression of the rhythm, but say the James Brown thing, right? Stay in the
yeah,
pocket and try to do the
yes,
same thing for as long as you can, and it gets you into this. Then I'm thinking about other things, but my body is still going, and that's
yes.
some of how I achieve this doing nothing. Yeah.
Funky drummer, yes, sir.
Yes. Clyde Stover.
Um, Sam, this has been an amazing conversation. Like I said, I think we can do spin-offs from here a million.
Right.
Um, I love the way your mind works. Thank you for taking the time and speaking with me, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks to listeners, viewers, and I hope everyone is encouraged to feel a little less crazy from watching our conversation today.